Well, since we're speaking about unleashing the power of the Indian economy, Manish Kejriwal, let me get you to comment on that. What are the themes that you believe will drive growth? What are the themes that you're going to be betting on as far as the next decade is concerned?
Sharon, thanks again for having us here. I just want to start off by saying the big difference that I see when we first started investing in India almost 20 years ago in the Temasek days, and I'll give some comparisons, was I think it goes back to what Chukani said, right? You believed in the quality of the Indian entrepreneur, just unleashing the energy, which at that time was capital starved, equity starved. Today, that's changed. That time there were very few potential sources of equity, which caused some of the behaviors that you talked about. Today, there's a very viable and a flexible and a burgeoning venture capital industry. There's a growth capital, there's a private equity industry. For the first time, there's a significant amount of exits. So you're giving money back to your investors. I mean, there was a joke when we were raising our fund. What does the word DPI mean? DPI is the amount of capital you give back for every dollar you invested. The story in India by the LPs was, hey, you took capital away, but am I supposed to give it back? That's somebody else, right? That's actually changed significantly. And the markets, thanks to Ramdev Agarwalji, thanks to other investors, today, when you look at large blocks to exit, I mean, KKR exited more than $1 billion of stock in Max Healthcare overnight. That was unprecedented. But if I just step back to your question and see, the other big change, which we used to say in the end of after the GFC, maybe the early part of the last decade, is we're investing despite the government. They were headwinds, and we say we'd still go out there. I think the big change, though we can't depend solely on that, is that strong headwind has become a gentle tailwind. Right? Are there issues? Of course there are issues. But by large and far, and KK will know this a lot better, but it feels like you're supported. There's the rules, the IBC, or it's the GST. And when you look at the level of, just look at Bombay today. The coastal road, the Trans Harbour, the metro coming up soon. It's 7 minutes from my office to Express Towers. Unprecedented. I want to go back to Express Towers. I don't want to be sitting in Worli anymore. But it's actually a magnificent change that each of us could see. And the last thing I'll leave with you is just the strength of our rural economy and this absolute scale. I think Ramdevji was saying this earlier today. If I was a global investor, firstly, I don't subscribe that all the money is running into India or China shut down. That's not true at all. It's going to take time. It's going to be driven by performance. It's going to be driven by discipline. And if we go into some of the bad habits we had in the past, I think it'll be a lost opportunity. But just to keep this scale, I used to, before we started Kedaara, about 12 years ago, we set up the first office of Temasek outside of Singapore, large Singapore sovereign. And there was a phenomenal leader who said, instead of investing domestically, let me sell down Singapore assets and invest in China and India. Very simple thought, but it's taking a megaton tanker and moving it around. One of the first companies we invested was ICICI. I remember Sharon teasing us and saying, what's going on here? Kuch takeover ho raha hai kya? But at that time, if I had two comparisons, we used to compare Singtel, one of our and Bharti. We used to compare DBS, which has done it's done phenomenally with Piyush. We used to compare it with both HDFC and ICICI. I think the ratio in market cap in 2004 or 5 was 15 to 1 or 10 to 1. I mean, I don't even know what the numbers are today, but I'll tell you 10 years from now or 5 years from now, it'll be 10 to 1 or 15 to 1, the other way around, driven. Good corporate governance, basic growth, the fact that housing and mortgages and hundreds of other products. I mean, to me, financial services is the lifeblood of the economy. It's a leverage play on the economy. And if you play financial services well, you're basically playing every sector.
For more news and updates, all you need to do is follow CNBC TV18 on all of our digital platforms.